Have you been paying attention to the latest trend of reversing lip filler and then going for the natural look? What do injectors need to know about this? And what does it mean in your consultation when patients are specifically asking for a natural look, but they are part of that demographic of younger women who usually wanted to stand out and actually look treated? So back in November 2022, I first predicted that we were going to see an increase in these reversals. And it's largely in part to, I think, the nature of, to a degree, fashion. So if you are in a crowd of people where everyone has their lips done, it's actually a bit of a statement to have them undone and to go for something natural, because then you're the one who stands out. So there's an element of me thinking this is about human psychology and differentiation, which is a normal survival instinct. I don't judge anyone for wanting to differentiate themselves, but it's a ping-ponging that might be occurring, combined with the nature of lip filler, which is that lip filler over time, I think a lot of them will need reversing, because if you repeat treatments over time, you lose definition. You try and get the definition back by retreating, and you end up with overfilled lips. It's almost part of the game until you've experienced it. It's quite easy to make the mistakes. I think it's quite common around the world for people to retreat lips that probably need reversing, but you don't get to do that forever. So there are these two different dynamics. There's the clinical picture, which is that you actually have a changing result over time. And then you have fashion trends, and they for once have met together, I think, for a lot of people, where it's time to have it out, to start again afresh, and to try and look more beautiful as opposed to just looking like you're different or standing out to the crowd. So many of you may have had the same thought that my producer Layla's had, which is that when you actually see these people talking about their lip filler, that they still look like they've had a bit of lip filler. So this is worth understanding, is that really what seems to be going on for a lot of that end of the spectrum is that there's a treatment that goes too far, it's then reversed, and then it's redone to basically a more normal level, but it's still absolutely, basically to the trained eye, it's just lip filler. To the untrained eye, they actually look like what they probably should have looked like all the way along. So what are you going to say to your patients when they come in? They often ask for things, in particular I've heard the term hydrating lips or a hydration type treatment. Now, what's actually going on here? I had a patient inbox me not so long ago thinking that this was not dermal filler, it was something else. And I think a lot of patients are led to believe this, certainly at the marketing phase, probably not in the consultation, that they're booking in for something that isn't dermal filler. And the reality is most hydrating treatments are just very similar procedures done usually with products that have a lower G prime, so they're less about shape, and usually with a bit less of volume placed in. But in every other way, they're extremely similar. The result is just more gentle, you don't have the changes in shape, and it just looks like you've drunk 4 glasses of water, better hydrated. But in many other ways, it's a very, very similar approach. And many so-called hydrated treatments just look like filler. If you're putting in 0.8 of a mil, it just looks like you've had filler. So worth understanding. What is going on underneath that is what we call a communication innovation. It's when you take the same thing and describe it in a different way, and it makes sense to people on a different level, but it is still the same thing. So hydrating treatment for me fits into that category. You're having lip filler, it's a more appropriate volume, and you call it something else so that patients get it quickly and they know that you're not going to make them look like a duck. So first thing is, when a patient says they want natural, there's more to it that you need to unpack in the consultation. This is the same as for any request. It's well worth spending the time getting them to articulate what it is that they are seeing in their own mind. So this can be done with pictures of celebrities. I know some people hate that, but for me, it's very hard to convey in words exactly what you're picturing, and a picture of someone who looks similar is helpful. So they might show you something that you've already done. If you've already put before and afters out, some patients will bring a specific image of, it's best when it's one of yours, but it could be someone else's before and after. And then, of course, just getting them to describe what they are hoping to see using their own face. So you get them to look in the mirror and show you, using their lips, what they would like to see. And this is it's almost like a game that you play to make sure it's all said out loud, and then you actually use that information to shape their expectations. So, or reflect back what they've said and say that you can do it. But it's a little process that's essential, even if you kind of know before they even speak what you're going to do and what natural will look like. You have to go through that process, and every now and then you will find someone who's picturing something that's not attainable, or that although they're using the word natural, what they're actually asking for is changes in the shape and the projection and proportion that you may not always associate with asking for natural. So don't always get hung up on the one word. Get them to say exactly what they're picturing, and then design a treatment plan around the details rather than just the term natural. Now, of course, there will be many people, and there are whole businesses that are built around people who are actually afraid of having their lips treated, but really want them treated. And those patients often want something more, but they start out with something incredibly subtle. And I think that's an acceptable journey, which is you start with something that's so imperceptible that not even their best friend will notice, but they at least get a feeling for what it's like, and then they can decide later on they want to be a little bit more adventurous. So there will be a cohort of patients who are coming using the term natural as code word for I'm really just scared of getting a bad result, but underneath that, they actually want a more projected top lip. And once you've got to the detail, you can actually design around what they actually are saying to you. Now, if you get to the bottom of all of this and someone really does just want a very subtle hydrating type treatment, little bits of volume, no extra shape, just want fullness, maybe some slight softening of some of the lines, then you can go down the route of designing a plan directly for that. The type of thing that you might do differently, for example, would be to use a lower G prime product. So we use products that are much softer rather than the higher G prime product that you might use if you were trying to attain some sort of shape. So this might be what is often used in other parts of the face. So fine line fillers, for example, if you might use Teoxane's Redensity 2 or Juvenum Ultra 2, Bolotero Balance, I think it is. I don't use all these different products, but they are on that softer end of the spectrum. They're not for holding shape. That's the kind of product that you might go for. You might also use a cannula instead of a needle because you just want to add a little bit of volume, or the hydration as it's sometimes called, but you're not trying to create shape and details. So it could lend itself better towards a cannula type treatment. And finally, it could also just be about the amount that you use. So you're not going to use a 2 mils of something if you want to create a really subtle result, are you? So it's typically going to be kind of 0.3 mils, 0.5 mil range, if not even less than that, to be honest, where you're just creating a difference that the patient knows is real, but even their own mum or their sister or their partner will not spot it. And that's often the first experience of people who are afraid of having lip fillers, want something natural. Some people will tick along like that for years, and others will get that bump in that direction, realize that having lips really makes them feel amazing, and want something a bit stronger the next time. And it's your job as a clinician to guide that process. So how do you avoid the overfilled look? So particularly with patients who come in asking for natural, or they already are afraid of overtreatment, it's really important to lay out some groundwork in terms of the term overfilled and how to avoid that experience. Probably one of the most common errors is not to emphasize enough the swelling process, because swelling, especially in someone who's afraid of being overtreated, can jolt them into a state of anxiety, and then it changes the perception of the treatment after that, no matter what it looks like. Anyone who's having a treatment, who's wanting a natural result, you must tell them that swelling is going to change what they see, because in the first 24 hours, it can make them think that they've got the wrong thing. So you must be sure before you inject them, because reassurance after the fact is a lot harder than giving them the forewarning. So forewarned is forearmed, as they always say. Tell them it's going to be swollen. It may look overtreated, but it will settle, because you can get that, unfortunately, even if you just do one horizontal injection each side. The swelling sometimes becomes too noticeable for some people. The next thing is, when in doubt, put less in so that you can put more in later. So it's way better to have a reason to add more than it is to have a reason to try and take some out. That's a much messier situation. So when your patient is anxious and particularly afraid of this, you want to be validating your intervention with them. So I quite like this technique. In fact, I've had it done with me, and I appreciated it when I had my teeth done, is the dentist, when she was doing some of the composite bonding, she got me to validate that I liked what I was seeing. And that's exactly what I do with patients. So I will do a small injection with someone who's particularly anxious, allow them to validate it. And really, I know that it's okay, but I want to bring them with me on the journey. Because as their mind perceives the changes, they accept them. It allays the anxiety, and it stops you getting into a situation where the perception is too far the other way, and they have anxiety around being overtreated because they're swollen, and you haven't given them a chance to ease into what they see. So the revealing of a treatment for someone who's anxious about overtreatment is definitely a more sensitive moment than other parts of the consultation and treatment. So we want to do it with that reminder that some of this is swelling, some of the redness is just from the needle, and not to show them in harsh lighting or too close up so they can see particularly the whole face. So I like to show my anxious patients a lip treatment where they see their whole face rather than a close-up of just their lips, because it gives it more context. And I've usually explained about the swelling before I've shown them that and got them to acknowledge that they've heard that, because that for me is one of the key moments where patients go one direction or the other. They can suddenly become very anxious if they think it's too swollen, and it's quite hard to bring them back. So all of that should come together with someone who's been handled delicately, treated gently, with a small amount of volume, and they should build trust with you and become a patient for life. That's hopefully the goal. So I hope that helps. By the way, guys, I'm doing a free webinar on the 28th of February. It's going to teach you everything you need to know to really pitch yourself correctly in terms of lip prices specifically. So how do you put your prices up? How do you value yourself correctly in the marketplace? It's all about not becoming a commodity. You're much more than just 1 mil. So click on the link down below to register.